You end up in a scenario where I have been making a lot of noise about this issue consistently, where I have clearly said, and I'm not the only one, where if there was an inquiry across the Bradford district, it would dwarf that in terms of the scale of Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oldham, where we've had...
Sure, here's a rewritten version of your text in clear, simple English with better grammar, punctuation, human-like tone, and expanded to around 1,000 words. I've removed repetition, made the ideas flow naturally, and kept the message sharp and engaging. Did Keir Starmer think the grooming scandal was forgotten? It seemed like Keir Starmer believed the scandal involving grooming gangs had been quietly pushed out of the spotlight. He likely hoped that by staying silent, changing his position at the last minute, and using the excuse of a local investigation, the issue would quietly fade away.
It seems to me that if the Labour government think it's okay to have a local inquiry because there's justification for it, then why can't they have a national inquiry? Because they can't really have it both ways. I mean, yesterday Keir Starmer said there's no need to have a national inquiry because we've already had one and we haven't enacted what it said we should do. Well, surely by that logic, there's no point in having a local one either.
Well, look, and this is the absolute frustration. So you take Keighley, an area where I represent within the Bradford district, where I've been consistently calling for a rape gang inquiry ever since I was elected, mentioning the issue about 40 or so times in the House of Commons chamber. Yet we have a local Labour-controlled authority that have refused every call to back a local inquiry. And then we have the national government refusing to step in and say to an area like Bradford District Council that we should have an inquiry forced on them by government. So you end up in a scenario where I have been making a lot of noise about this issue consistently, where I have clearly said, and I'm not the only one, where if there was an inquiry across the Bradford district, it would dwarf that in terms of the scale of Rotherham, Rochdale, Telford, Oldham, where we've had previously, but yet not local government or national government is willing to do the right thing and implement an inquiry.
But that plan fell apart in a big way. A Conservative MP, Robbie Moore, spoke out live on television and exposed shocking details that reignited public anger across the country. His comments didn't just reopen the discussion, they shook the political landscape and brought the scandal right back to the front pages. So what exactly did Robbie Moore say? And why has it caused such a storm? Let's break it down. A bold and blunt accusation. Robbie Moore didn't hold back. He didn't speak carefully or use vague language. He directly accused the Labour Party of failing to act on grooming gang crimes and of doing it on purpose. He began by exposing a promise Labour made but didn't keep. The party had said they would launch a national investigation into the grooming gangs that had targeted young girls in several towns.
Absolutely nobody is stopping me from pushing for more, which I'm sure that all of my ministerial colleagues would tell you, having been in meetings with me. But I think it is the point of view of Parliament. That is what Parliament is here to do. It is here to strength test the things that we do. And absolutely, I welcome that. And to the previous Honourable Lady's point, what I absolutely do want to say is this is just the beginning, not the end, as I said in my statement.
But just before the Easter break, Labour MP Jess Phillips quietly released a statement saying the national inquiry wouldn't go ahead after all. There was no debate, no major announcement, just a sudden, low-key cancellation. It was a move that many saw as sneaky, and Moore called it out in public. Jess Phillips had no strong argument to defend the decision, and she was left visibly uncomfortable and embarrassed. This, according to Moore, is exactly how Starmer's government operates. They make big promises to get applause and attention, but when the public stops watching, they backtrack.
Caroline Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend, the Shadow Minister, gave very graphic and disturbing examples of some horrific abuse suffered by just a couple of the young ladies affected by these grooming gangs, and she asked some important questions about grooming gangs. And I was disappointed to see that the Minister, instead of answering her questions, talked about lists of numbers of meetings that her predecessors have had, and talked about the fact that many girls are abused by people who are not in grooming gangs. Of course that's true, but both are important.
Yes.
One of the answers that I did hear her give to another honourable member was, and I quote, "As I would do if I wasn't sitting in this position, push for more." So I ask her, why are the inquiries only limited to 5 areas? What about those in the other areas? Does she not recognise that giving people a choice of whether their area is investigated or not is an incentive for those who wish to cover up not to bid or not to bid well for those inquiries? And above all, who or what is preventing her from delivering the more she would push for?
Announcing this major change just before Parliament went on break wasn't a coincidence. It was, Moore claimed, an act of political cowardice. Starmer's image under fire. Until now, Starmer had managed to present himself as a calm, respectable leader, but Moore stripped away that image. He showed a different side of Starmer, not as a statesman, but as a behind-the-scenes strategist who prioritizes politics over justice. Moore pointed out that areas like Keighley and Bradford places with Labour-run councils have been sitting on serious abuse allegations for years. Yet, no proper investigations have been launched in these towns. This is not just negligence. Moore argued it's a cover-up. And this is where it gets even more serious. If the full truth about what happened in these Labour-controlled towns ever comes out, the consequences won't just be political, they'll be historic. Starmer says Labour has changed, but Moore suggests the party is still being run by the same old local networks that are trying to hide the past. Moore names names and demands action. One of the most shocking moments came when Robbie Moore revealed that a retired police officer who had tried to expose the abuse in Bradford was allegedly threatened with arrest. Think about that. A police officer trying to do the right thing was pressured into silence.
And that is incredibly frustrating. You need as much transparency and openness on this issue as possible, not only to reinstall trust back in with the victims, the survivors that have been subjected to such heinous crime for so long, but also you need to ensure that those organisations that have had safeguarding responsibility, or indeed the perpetrators themselves, are held robustly to account. And no local authority, when they know they have done wrongdoing, like I'm sure that is the case within Labour-run Bradford Council, that they will not want to instigate an inquiry. And that is why it is the morally right thing for the government to step in and instigate a statutory inquiry that has the powers to compel witnesses to come forward, so that we can address this issue robustly once and for all.
And you put out a statement today on your social media talking about a retired police officer who says that he was threatened with arrest amid the stories circulating about abuse gangs and rape gangs in Bradford. I mean, that's an extraordinary revelation, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is absolutely extraordinary. And this is work that's been done by reporter and investigator Charlie Peters, who has uncovered that an individual who has a huge amount of experience as a retired police officer working on this was subjected to effectively being told to be quiet. This is where the system is absolutely failing and not listening to valid concerns that not only been made by victims and survivors, but concerns that have been made also by the likes of retired police officers that have been quite validly making those concerns, but no one is listening, which is why it is the duty right now of the Home Secretary to make an announcement on the back of these findings that have come out today by Charlie Peters and put in place.
According to Moore, this is what happens under Labour-led councils. The truth isn't just ignored, it's actively suppressed. If even the police are being intimidated, what chance do the victims have? This isn't just about bad policy anymore. Moore argued that this is a deep systemic problem, and Starmer's unwillingness to fully confront it makes him part of the problem. A national inquiry or just another excuse? Moore didn't just highlight the problem. He called for a real solution, a full, independent statutory inquiry. That means an investigation with legal power to force councils and officials to speak under oath and reveal what they know.
Something that we have been calling for consistently now across the Bradford district, but this needs to happen at a national level, where we know that there are about 45, 50 towns where concerns of gang rape, child sexual exploitation has happened, and it is about time where we have a national scandal of this nature that the government of the day get to grips with it and provide that reassurance and that proper justice to those many victims and survivors that have been impacted by this.
No more reviews, no more discussions, and no more carefully worded press statements. He wants accountability. But according to Moore, Starmer and the Labour leadership don't want that. Why? It could expose a long-standing culture of silence and denial. Instead, Starmer says local inquiries are enough, but Moore explained why that's not acceptable. Local councils can control local inquiries. They can delay them, limit what's asked, and bury results. That's not justice. That's a cover-up disguised as concern. It's like letting someone write their own report card. They'll never give themselves a failing grade. Why this moment matters. This isn't just a fight between two political parties. At its heart, this is about whether victims of serious abuse will ever get justice, and whether people in power will be held responsible for ignoring their pain.
This issue.
Yes, because you've also very much highlighted the fact that, you know, it's not simply about those perpetrators who did those ghastly things to such young children, because they were children, many of them. It's about the administration of those councils. It's about the police involvement, surely, as well. So it's not really good enough to have the councils and the police investigating themselves. Surely you need an overarching body to do the whole thing.
Absolutely. Openness and transparency is key and at the heart of this. You cannot end up in a scenario which this government seems to be creating, where local authorities are being empowered to mark their own homework. That does not result in any significant change, indeed any reassurance to those victims and survivors. That's why it needs to be truly independent. And it's incredibly frustrating on the back of the announcement that was made by the Home Secretary in January that did indicate that there would be 5 additional local inquiries, that £5 million would be allocated towards, that now seems to be watered down and we're not going to get that. And when, again, I come back to the point that when you have a local authority like Bradford Council that do not even want that inquiry, indeed they released a statement just yesterday strengthening their position that they don't want that additional openness and transparency, it asks the question quite validly, why? So why on earth is this government not doing the right thing and holding their own local authorities to account? It is shameful, and the government, again, need to get a grip, and I call on the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary to do so.
Moore's speech made one thing clear. If we rely on local governments to investigate themselves, the truth may never come out. And if national leaders like Starmer don't step up, then justice is being denied by design. People across the country are now asking, why did Labour really cancel the national inquiry? Was it just a political strategy to avoid bad headlines during an election year? Or is it something deeper, an effort to shield the party from the consequences of its own past? What do you think? Should there be a national inquiry into the grooming gang scandal? Is Keir Starmer trying to delay the investigation until after his time in office is over? Do you think victims will ever get the justice they deserve if the same local councils that failed them are in charge of investigating themselves? Let us know what you think in the comments below. If you found this explanation helpful and want more content that breaks down the real issues behind British politics, don't forget to like and share this post. And if you want to stay informed, subscribe for more updates on stories that matter. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious.